Welcome to my channel, The Human Frontier.
You may proceed with
the first time I saw Princess Erin Valais, she was standing beneath the shattered banners of a dying empire. Not in person. In a report. And that report was mine. The war had ended 3 days earlier. Or at least that was what Command had called it. Hostilities concluded. Strategic victory achieved. Imperial compliance secured. The official language always sounded clean. Clinical. It never mentioned the screaming. It never mentioned the smoke. It never mentioned how the sky above Kayla Prime burned violet for 17 straight hours. I was still wearing my combat armor when they summoned me to file the final engagement log. The metal plating was scorched along the left shoulder where a plasma lance had nearly taken my arm. My visor had cracked during orbital descent. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline that had nowhere left to go. Lieutenant Orrin Hale, the adjutant officer said, not looking up from her holographic slate. "You're the ranking surviving officer from Sector 12? Yes, Then you will submit the decisive combat analysis. It goes directly to the Royal Strategic Council." I didn't realize then what that meant. I didn't realize who would read it. Sector 12 had been a slaughterhouse. Kayla Prime was not a primitive world. The Keylorians were advanced, bioadaptive armor, neural-linked infantry, aerial beasts engineered for atmospheric dominance. They fought like something born from storms and sharpened by extinction. And at the center of it all was their commander. Princess Erin Valais. Daughter of the Keylorian Empress. Heir to a throne carved from star metal. Our intelligence had underestimated her. That mistake had cost us 4,112 soldiers. The first time we encountered her forces, we thought she was a ceremonial leader. Political symbol. Decorative strategist. Then she split our armored division in half with a gravity inversion strike. Then she counter-hacked 3 of our orbital satellites mid-battle. Then she personally led a skyborne charge riding a winged war beast through artillery fire. By the third engagement, our soldiers were whispering her name like a myth. Not with hatred. With awe. I didn't meet her face to face until the final day. It was raining ash when I saw her. Her armor was silver and midnight blue, curved like flowing water, etched with luminescent lines that pulsed faintly with each movement. Her helmet was retracted, revealing pale skin marked with faint bioluminescent patterns across her temples. Her eyes were not human. They were luminous violet. And steady. Even as her forces fell back. Even as orbital strikes carved trenches across the plains. She stood at the center of the battlefield, issuing commands with terrifying calm. I don't know why I didn't fire. I had a clear shot. My rifle's targeting reticle locked over her chest plate. All I had to do was squeeze. Instead, I watched. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't fleeing. She was calculating. That's when I realized something critical. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to protect something. Her troop movements weren't offensive. They were defensive corridors. She was shepherding civilians out of the blast radius. She was sacrificing territory to buy evacuation time. And if High Command had known that, they would have labeled it weakness. They would have accelerated orbital annihilation. Instead, I did something no soldier is trained to do. I observed. I recorded. And when the final engagement ended, when her forces surrendered to prevent planetary sterilization, I wrote the truth. My combat report did not call her reckless. It did not call her savage. It did not call her enemy. It described her as brilliant. Strategically adaptive. Civilian prioritizing. Morally constrained. I wrote that had she chosen full retaliation, we would have lost the sector. I wrote that her surrender prevented mass extinction. I wrote that executing her would ignite a rebellion that would last generations. I recommended clemency. Not because I felt sympathy. Because it was strategically sound. I signed my name. Lieutenant Orrin Hale. Submitted to Royal Strategic Council. Transmission complete. 3 days later, I was summoned to the capital. Not to a tribunal. To the palace. The Nova Citadel rose like a spear of glass and white metal above the capital city. War banners hung along its terraces. Victory celebrations echoed through the lower districts. But the upper tiers were quiet. Controlled. Political. A royal escort met me at the landing platform. Lieutenant Hale, the guard said, voice neutral. You are to appear before Her Majesty. Her Majesty? I repeated. The Empress. My pulse slowed. This was not routine. This was consequence. The Royal Strategic Council chamber was circular, tiered, illuminated by a suspended star-core chandelier that cast shifting light across polished obsidian floors. And at the center stood a single figure in restraint fields. Princess Erin Valeri's. She looked smaller without her battlefield presence. Her armor had been removed. She wore a fitted Kilorian diplomatic garment, deep blue, minimal ornamentation. Her wrists were encased in energy cuffs. But her posture was unchanged. Back straight. Chin level. Unbowed. Around the chamber stood counselors, generals, admirals. And on the elevated throne platform, the Empress of the Terran Dominion. Cold-eyed. Immovable. She looked down at the princess like one might examine a dangerous artifact. Lieutenant Orrin Hale, the Empress said, her voice amplified softly by the chamber's acoustics. You authored the final combat assessment for Sector 12. Yes, Your Majesty. You described this prisoner as a stabilizing force rather than an existential threat. Yes. You recommended against execution. Yes. The chamber was silent. Then the Empress gestured. A holographic projection of my report appeared mid-air. Highlighted sections. Strategic observations. Civilian corridors. Projected insurgency risks. You understand, she said, that if your assessment is flawed, her survival could cost us thousands of lives. I do. And you are prepared to stake your career on its accuracy. I hesitated. Then answered honestly. Yes. The council murmured. I didn't look at the princess. But I could feel her gaze on me. The Empress descended from her throne. Walked slowly across the chamber floor. Stopped directly in front of Erin. For your sake, the Empress said quietly, you should hope this human is correct. Then she turned. Princess Erin Valeri's will not be executed. Shock rippled through the chamber. She will be remanded under supervised integration. Observation period, indefinite. A pause. And Lieutenant Hale will oversee the assessment. The silence this time was heavier. What? I said before I could stop myself. The Empress's eyes met mine. You claim insight into her strategic temperament. You will test your theory. I glanced at Erin. Her expression had changed. Not fear. Not relief. Something sharper. Interest. That was how it began. Not with romance. Not with trust. But with responsibility. My combat report had spared her life. And bound mine to hers. She was transferred to a secured wing of the Citadel, comfortable, but monitored. Not a dungeon. A diplomatic containment suite. I was assigned quarters adjacent to hers. The first time we spoke privately, there were 2 guards outside the door and 3 concealed scanners in the ceiling. She stood near the window, looking out at the capital skyline. You are the one, she said without turning. Yes. You did not fire. I froze. You saw me, she continued. On the battlefield. Yes. You chose not to kill me. I had orders to assess command patterns. A lie. She turned then. Her violet eyes locked onto mine. You hesitated. It wasn't accusation. It was analysis. Yes, I admitted. She studied me for a long moment. Then said softly, "Your report changed my fate." I didn't know what to say to that. Because she was right. And I was just beginning to realize. It had changed mine too. The first night after the tribunal, I didn't sleep. Not because of fear. Because of consequence. Through the thin metallic wall separating our quarters, I could hear the faint hum of Kilorian bioluminescent resonance. Her species emitted low-frequency energy patterns when under stress. Our xenobiologists had documented it during early encounters. It wasn't loud. But it wasn't subtle either. Princess Erin Valais was not calm. And neither was the Dominion. By morning, the news networks had already begun their spin. Enemy commander spared. Royal clemency raises questions. Was mercy a mistake? Public opinion fractured instantly. Veterans demanded execution. Politicians debated resource allocation. Military analysts questioned strategic leniency. And inside the citadel, whispers grew sharper. I received my first official warning before midday. Commander Rhys Toland, decorated war hero, survivor of 3 planetary sieges, cornered me in a corridor overlooking the lower city. "You think you did something noble?" he asked, voice low. "I did something strategic." He stepped closer. "She killed good soldiers." "So did we." His jaw tightened. "She would have wiped us out if she could." "No," I said evenly. "She could have." "She didn't." That stopped him. "You're naive," he muttered. "Or compromised." "I'm observant." He stared at me a moment longer before walking away. But the warning had been delivered. If this failed, it wouldn't just be my career. It would be my name in the margins of history under the word miscalculation. 3 days into her containment period, I began formal evaluation sessions. No interrogation lights. No torture. Just dialogue. 2 chairs facing one another across a low, circular table embedded with passive scanners. She entered without escorting guards touching her. Dominion protocol respected her status as a captured sovereign heir. She sat gracefully. "You are studying me," she said. "Yes." "Like a weapon?" "Like a variable." Her lips curved faintly. "Your species always thinks in terms of control. And yours? Balance." She leaned back slightly. "You want to know why I surrendered?" "Yes." "Your orbital command locked onto our planetary core." I felt a flicker of surprise. "That was classified." She tilted her head. "You underestimate Kilorian quantum interceptors." I did. "We all had." She continued. "You would have destabilized the planet's mantle. Billions would die. Not only my people." She looked directly at me. "Yours as well." That made my pulse spike. "Explain." "There are mineral veins beneath Kala Prime. Rare elements tied to subspace resonance. You've already begun extraction surveys." That was true. If the core destabilized, the resulting chain reaction would ripple through the sector's jump lanes. Trade routes. Military corridors. Supply chains. Your empire would have fractured its own arteries. I stared at her. "Why didn't you broadcast that?" She gave me a look that felt almost disappointed. "Because your high command would have accelerated annihilation to avoid appearing manipulated." She wasn't wrong. We were proud. Sometimes suicidally so. "So you surrendered," I said. "I chose survival. For your people. For everyone." That conversation altered something inside me. Not loyalty. Not yet. But perspective. My report had been based on battlefield observation. Now it was backed by strategic revelation. And the more I spoke with her, the clearer it became. The Dominion had not defeated Kayla Prime. We had cornered it. The assassination attempt came on day 7. It wasn't dramatic. No explosions. No screaming alarms. Just a silent drone slipping through maintenance corridors, bypassing security protocols with stolen command codes. I was reviewing sensor logs in my quarters when the anomaly pinged. A fluctuation in the surveillance grid outside her containment suite. Minor. But wrong. I ran. I didn't call it in. Instinct. The corridor was empty when I arrived. Her door was sealed. But the access panel was sparking faintly. Someone had overridden internal safeguards. I forced the door open manually. Inside, she stood in the center of the room. And hovering 3 meters from her chest. A compact Dominion execution drone. Targeting laser fixed. She wasn't moving. Not frozen. Waiting. The drone's optics adjusted as I entered. It recalculated threat priority. Me. I didn't have my rifle. Only a sidearm. Not enough. But I fired anyway. The first shot destabilized its targeting array. The second pierced its propulsion ring. The third detonated its core. The explosion knocked me backward into the doorway. Smoke filled the room. Emergency suppression systems activated. When my hearing returned, she was kneeling beside me. Her cuffs flickered under stress but held. "You were not assigned to defend me," she said quietly. "I was assigned to evaluate you." That was not evaluation. I winced as I pushed myself upright. No, I admitted. It wasn't. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal. Internal sabotage. High-level clearance codes. Someone inside the Dominion wanted her dead. And someone had been willing to risk destabilizing the Empress's decree to make it happen. Commander Toland was questioned. So were half the Strategic Council. No proof. No confession. But the message was clear. Clemency had enemies. And so did I. After that night, the tone between us shifted. Not softer. Sharper. More honest. "You should not have intervened," she said during our next session. "If you had died, my report would be meaningless. You are not responsible for my survival. I made myself responsible." She studied me for a long time. "In my culture," she said slowly, "life debts are not symbolic. I didn't save you for leverage. That does not negate the bond." I sighed. "I don't want a bond. You already forged one." Her voice wasn't emotional. It was factual. And that unsettled me more than anything else. Weeks passed. Integration protocols began. Cultural exchange briefings. Joint scientific panels. Economic analysis. The Empress was cautious but pragmatic. If Kayla Prime could be stabilized without rebellion, the Dominion would gain not just territory but alliance. But unrest simmered. Veteran protests grew louder. Several outer colonies threatened tax refusal. Propaganda campaigns labeled Erin the Butcher of Sector 12. I knew the numbers. I had read the casualty lists. But I had also seen the evacuation corridors. Truth, in war, was rarely clean. The real turning point came during the Senate hearing. Public broadcast. Full spectrum. The Empress stood before the Assembly. So did Erin. So did I. Lieutenant Hale's report claims, a senator began sharply, that the Princess of Kayla Prime acted with strategic restraint. Yet Dominion soldiers died in the thousands. They did, I said. And you believe she deserves mercy? I believe execution guarantees future war. Murmurs spread. And mercy guarantees peace. No, I replied steadily. But it creates the possibility. A senator turned toward Erin. Princess, if freed, would you swear loyalty to the Dominion? She didn't hesitate. No. The chamber erupted. Guards shifted. Hands moved toward weapons. The Empress raised a single hand and silence returned. Explain, the Empress commanded. Erin's voice carried evenly across the chamber. I will not swear subjugation. But I will swear alliance. Conditional, a senator scoffed. Mutual, she corrected. She stepped forward despite her restraint cuffs. You fear rebellion. So do I. You fear instability. So do I. You fear future war. She looked at the assembly. I have already prevented one. Silence again. Heavy. Charged. Then she did something unexpected. She turned toward me. And your lieutenant knows it. Every eye in the chamber shifted to me. This was the moment. The one history would remember. I inhaled slowly. She's right. Not about loyalty. Not about destiny. About reality. If we execute her, Kayla Prime fractures into insurgency factions. We spend decades suppressing them. If we imprison her indefinitely, she becomes a martyr. I paused. If we negotiate alliance, we gain a partner who already chose survival over annihilation. The Empress studied us both. Long. Calculating. Then she spoke. Princess Erin Valais will be released from restraint pending formal treaty negotiations. Shock rippled again. But, she added, voice sharp as a blade, if either of you have misjudged the other. Her gaze lingered on me. The consequences will not be contained to careers. That night, for the first time, the energy hum through the wall was different. Not stress. Not fear. Something steadier. I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the capital skyline. Moments later, the door behind me slid open. She joined me. No guards. No restraints. Just two figures standing above a city that had nearly demanded her death. You changed my fate, she said quietly. You changed your own. She shook her head slightly. Without your report, there would have been no hearing. Without her surrender, there would have been no report. War had intertwined our decisions long before we understood it. What were you protecting on Kayla Prime? I asked finally. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she extended her hand. Bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly across her skin. There is something you must see, she said. And once you do. Her violet eyes met mine. Your empire will never look the same. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories. The transport descended through Kayla Prime's upper atmosphere in silence. No Dominion warships escorted us. That had been her condition. No visible occupation fleet. No intimidation. Just a diplomatic cruiser, minimal crew, and an agreement sealed by the Empress's own signature. The sky below was no longer burning violet. It was a deep, oceanic blue, streaked with silver cloud formations that shimmered faintly with atmospheric ionotation. The planet was healing. Or trying to. I stood at the viewport beside Princess Erin Valais as the capital city of Lythera came into view, spires grown from crystalline bioarchitecture, curving structures that seemed shaped by wind and light rather than machinery. You expected ruins, she said softly. I expected damage. There is damage, she replied. You simply cannot see it from orbit. That unsettled me. I had seen orbital bombardment from both sides. I knew what it looked like. Scars. Cracks. Blackened continents. Kayla Prime looked intact. Too intact. We landed on a platform suspended above a vast inner sea. No armed reception. No visible defenses. Only a small delegation of Kilorian officials waiting at the edge of the landing pad. When the ramp lowered, Erin stepped forward first. The delegation bowed, not deeply, but respectfully. Not to a conqueror. Not to a prisoner. To a sovereign returned alive. I followed. Eyes tracked me immediately. Not with hatred. With assessment. I was the human who had altered the war's final chapter. I didn't know yet whether that made me ally or liability. The journey to the inner sanctum took us beneath the city. Lythera wasn't built upward alone, it extended downward into vast, luminous caverns carved by ancient tectonic shifts. Bioluminescent flora pulsed along the walls. Waterfalls descended from openings in the rock ceiling, dispersing into mist that refracted pale blue light. This was not shown in our scans, I said quietly. It would not have appeared, she replied. Why? Because it is not entirely physical. That answer lingered in my mind as we passed through a circular threshold carved with symbols that glowed faintly in response to her presence. The air changed. Felt denser. Charged. My skin prickled. And then I saw it. At the center of the cavern stood a structure unlike anything I had encountered in any Dominion archive. It rose from the ground like a fractured pillar of liquid crystal, spiraling strands of translucent material interwoven with metallic veins that pulsed rhythmically. It wasn't technological in any familiar sense. It wasn't organic either. It was something between. What is it? I asked. Erin stepped closer to it, the light reflecting across her face. This is the core lattice. Your planetary power source? In part. She turned to me. It is also what your orbital strike would have destabilized. I remembered her warning. Chain reaction. Jump lane collapse. Sector-wide instability. You're saying this structure is tied to subspace resonance? Yes. How? She extended her hand toward the lattice. The structure responded. Light intensified. A low hum vibrated through the cavern. The core lattice is older than our species, she said. We did not build it. I stared at her. You discovered it. We were shaped by it. The implications hit like a physical force. You're telling me your civilization evolved around an ancient alien megastructure. She met my gaze evenly. Yes. And we nearly destroyed it. Yes. I swallowed. And if we had? The lattice anchors 3 major subspace corridors, she said. Corridors your empire relies on for faster-than-light travel. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. You would have lost not just Kayla Prime. She let the sentence hang. You would have fractured half your expansion network. The realization was staggering. Our victory had balanced on the edge of catastrophic self-destruction. All because we had not understood what lay beneath the surface. You could have told us, I said quietly, and risked you accelerating your assault to prevent strategic embarrassment, she replied. You're assuming we're that irrational. She looked at me, not coldly, not angrily. Just honestly. You are. I couldn't argue. Not after years in command briefings. Not after seeing pride override logic again and again. So you surrendered to protect this, I said. I surrendered to protect everyone, she corrected. And you believed your empire might listen. She paused. I believed one of you might. My breath caught slightly. That's why you didn't fire, she continued. You saw the corridors. You saw me pulling civilians out. You understood something was different. I had. Instinctively. Before logic caught up. And you gambled on me, I said. Yes. The weight of that settled heavily in my chest. She hadn't just surrendered. She had chosen to trust the possibility of understanding. And I had unknowingly validated it. The tremor came without warning. The lattice pulsed erratically. The hum shifted into a sharp, dissonant vibration. Kilorian officials moved instantly, activating consoles embedded in the cavern walls. "What's happening?" I demanded. Erin's expression darkened. "Resonance instability." "From what?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lifted toward the cavern ceiling. Then toward me. "Your empire has begun deep core extraction." Ice spread through my veins. "They wouldn't dare. They already have." Another tremor. Stronger. Fragments of crystal dislodged from the upper cavern walls. "If they destabilize the lattice from your side," she said urgently, "it will cascade here." "How long?" "Hours. Perhaps less." I stepped back instinctively. "You need to contact the Empress." "They will not believe us without proof," she said. I looked at the lattice. Then at her. "What do you need?" She didn't hesitate. "You." The core lattice wasn't just a structure. It was a network. Its energy patterns were partially biological, responsive to neural frequencies. Kilorians could interface with it. Not fully control it, but stabilize it. However, centuries earlier, their scientists had discovered something unexpected. Human neural architecture resonated differently. More aggressively. More chaotically. But potentially stronger. "You're saying I can interface with it?" I asked. "You already have," she said quietly. "Your presence altered its baseline output." That explained the earlier hum. It had reacted to me. Because I had stood on the battlefield. Because I had hesitated. Because I had chosen not to fire. The lattice had felt that decision. Or something like it. "This is insane," I muttered. "Yes," she agreed calmly. "But necessary." The tremors intensified. Time was evaporating. "If I do this and it fails?" I asked. "It will not fail." "That's not what I asked." Her eyes softened, not with fragility, but with something deeper. "If it fails," she said, "we will fail together." There was no melodrama in her voice. Only fact. And somehow, that made the decision easier. The interface chamber formed around the lattice's base as crystalline segments shifted into a circular platform. Bioluminescent threads extended toward both of us. "Place your hand here," she instructed. I did. The surface was warm. Alive. Energy surged through my arm. Not pain. Information. Light exploded across my vision. Not external light. Internal. Star maps. Energy pathways. Subspace corridors stretching like luminous veins across the galaxy. And at the center. Instability. Deep core drilling from Dominion extraction fleets had triggered resonance interference. Small, at first. But escalating. I felt her presence beside me in the network. Her neural signature was smoother. Focused. Guiding. "Follow my lead," she said, not aloud, but through the shared field. The sensation was overwhelming. The lattice wasn't just energy. It was memory. Echoes of ancient signals. Civilizations long gone. It wasn't a power source. It was a beacon. A stabilizer for interstellar travel. And we had nearly shattered it. I focused. On the battlefield. On the moment I chose not to fire. On restraint instead of destruction. The lattice responded. Its pulse began to align with my neural rhythm. Erin amplified it. Our patterns intertwined. The tremors slowed. Energy spikes flattened. Far above, Dominion extraction arrays flickered as resonance feedback surged through their systems. I pushed harder. Not with force. With intent. Stabilize. Balance. Preserve. The lattice's light surged blindingly bright. Then. Silence. Stillness. The hum returned to its steady baseline. The tremors ceased. We collapsed simultaneously onto the crystalline floor, breathing hard, alive. Hours later, emergency transmissions flooded Dominion channels. Extraction fleets had experienced massive system failures. Core drilling suspended. Scientific anomalies reported across 3 sectors. The Empress herself requested immediate briefing. This time, she didn't question my assessment. She listened. As Erin explained the lattice. As I confirmed what we had experienced. As sensor data validated resonance stabilization. For the first time since the war began, the Dominion understood. We had not conquered Kala Prime. We had stumbled upon something far older than our empire, and nearly destroyed it through ignorance. That night, beneath the glowing canopy of Lythera's inner sea, the Empress transmitted a formal declaration. Deep core extraction suspended indefinitely. Joint Dominion-Calorian Research Initiative established. Princess Erin Valeries recognized not as prisoner, but as sovereign ally. And my combat report? It became required reading in every Dominion military academy. Not as a story of mercy, but as a lesson in perception, in restraint, in understanding what lies beneath the surface. As for me, I stood once more beside Erin at the balcony of Lythera's upper spire. The sea below shimmered. Stars reflected across its surface. You changed more than my fate, she said quietly. No, I replied. We changed each other's. She studied the horizon. There will be those who never accept this alliance. I know. There will be future conflicts. I know. She looked at me. And you will stand with me. I didn't hesitate this time. Yes. Not because of duty. Not because of politics. But because I had seen what she was protecting. And she had seen what I could become. War had brought us to the edge of annihilation. Understanding had pulled us back. And somewhere between a battlefield hesitation and a glowing ancient lattice, a new future had begun. End of story.